Today's episode of Variant is brought to you by Dollar Shave Club. Today on Variant, I give you the history of the Transformers. Welcome to Variant, where we love comics more than I loved Superman ice cream as a kid. I'm your host, Arris. Now, some of you may be thinking Transformers isn't really comic book related. Why are you talking about Transformers? Well, for those of you thinking that, Transformers is absolutely comic book related. It was actually Marvel Comics who helped create the names and story for them. Plus, Transformers are awesome and a big part of my childhood, not to mention their new movie comes out Friday if you're watching this before the 27th, that is. So, this is the perfect time to talk about the cartoon and comic I'm quite fond of. Now, before I get into the history, just note there have been tons of different tellings, retellings, comics, and TV series for Transformers over the years, but I'm primarily going to be sticking to the G1 Transformers. G1 stands for Generation 1, which is the time span between 1984 through 1993. Although later I will be talking about the Beast Wars, which ran from 1996 to 1999, but that's simply because I love that cartoon and toys from that series so dang much. The Transformers began with the 1980s Japanese toy lines Microman and Diaclone. Microman were humanoid type figures, while the Diaclone were robots able to transform into everyday vehicles, electronic items, or weapons. One day, famous toy company Hasbro came along fresh from their success of G.I. Joe, a real American hero toy line, which used Microman technology. Hasbro bought the Diaclone toys and partnered with Takara. And as I mentioned in a past Did You Know segment, Jim Shooter and Dennis O'Neil of Marvel were hired by Hasbro to create backstory for the Transformers. O'Neil created the Transformer named Optimus Prime, and afterwards Bob Budiansky created the name Megatron and most of the Transformers characters, giving names and personalities to many of the unnamed Diaclone figures. The primary concept of Generation 1 Transformers is as follows. On the planet Cybertron, there has evolved a race of sentient robots named Autobots. However, a group led by Megatron named the Decepticons throw the planet into a state of civil war. The Autobots are initially slaughtered until a warrior named Optimus Prime leads them. The battle is so intense that Cybertron is thrown out of orbit and sent towards an asteroid field. Prime leads a team of Autobots to clear the field, but after they have done so, Megatron and a team of Decepticons attack them. Too weak to fight, Optimus Prime sends the ship crashing into a then uninhabited Earth to end the Decepticons. They crash into a volcano and lie dormant for 4 million years. In 1984, the volcano erupts, activating the ship's computer, which sets about rebuilding both groups. Both groups wake up, with the Ark having given them new Earth-based transformations. The Decepticons immediately withdraw to set up their own power base. The Autobots inspect severe damage to the Ark, which is their spaceship, and decide to contact the planet's dominant life forms, which the Ark mistakes the vehicles for, when obviously humans are the dominant life form on Earth, and the Autobots eventually realize that. Although, imagine if cars were the dominant life form and we were the forms of transportation, so they drove in us. That'd be weird. Long story short, the Autobots and Decepticons continue their fight on Earth. Now, all of what I just mentioned happened in their first ever comic book series titled The Transformers, put out by Marvel. The Marvel comic was originally part of the main Marvel universe. It had appearances from Spider-Man and Nick Fury, plus some cameos, as well as a visit to the Savage Land, which had the Dinobots, who, by the way, are making their big screen debut in Transformers Age of Extinction. As for the Transformers original G1 cartoon series, which is what Transformers is most known for besides their awesome toy line, the Transformers TV series launched around the same time as the comic. From the start, it differed from the backstories created by Budiansky for Marvel's comics. The TV series shows the Autobots looking for new energy sources and crash landing as the Decepticons attack, while Marvel interpreted the Autobots as destroying a rogue asteroid approaching Cybertron. Shockwave is loyal to Megatron in the cartoon, keeping Cybertron at a stalemate during his absence. But in the comic books, he attempts to take command of the Decepticons. The TV series also differed widely from the origins Budiansky had created for the Dinobots. In 1986, the cartoon became a movie called, you guessed it, The Transformers the Movie, which is set in the year 2005. It introduced the Matrix as the Autobot matrix of leadership, as a fatally wounded Prime gives it to Ultra Magnus. However, and spoiler, which really isn't a spoiler because the movie is over 20 years old, but I decided to give you guys a warning anyway, so spoiler, 1, 2, 3, Prime dies and drops the Matrix, which is then caught by Hot Rod, who subsequently becomes Rodimus Prime later on in the film. As for different types of Transformers, you have the Autobots and Decepticons, as everyone knows, but then you have subgroups like the Dinobots and Constructicons. Dinobots are, as the name implies, dinosaur robots. They are a rowdy, arrogant, lowbrow, disobedient band of warriors that some Autobots would rather scrap than have to deal with. They're also one of the most powerful and close-knit combat units in the Autobot army, being incredibly powerful in robot mode and taking alternate modes based on dinosaurs. Most of them dislike Optimus Prime, so whether or not they follow the Autobots' leader's orders depends on what those orders are. If it's to destroy stuff, they're going to be down for that. If it's to help people, it kind of depends on what the weather's like. Grimlock is the leader of the Dinobots and is the most famous out of the bunch. As for the Constructicons, they're a group of Transformer Decepticons who all assemble into one huge powerful Transformer, kind of like the Dinosaurs from the Power Rangers coming together to form the Megazord. And when the Constructicons come together, they form Devastator, who was in Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Now remember earlier when I said I was going to talk about Beast Wars simply because I love the cartoon and toy line so much growing up? Well, that time is now. Beast Wars Transformers, which is the full name of the show, directly follows the Transformers G1 continuity established by the 1984 TV series and the 86 animated movie. The two main groups of the Transformers in Beast Wars are descendants of the two main groups in the original cartoon. The Maximals, which are the descendants of the Autobots, and the Predacons, which are the descendants of the Decepticons. The Beast Wars series opens at an unspecified time and place where two groups of robots have crashed on a strange planet populated by animals like those on Earth. The planet is mysterious with vast deposits of raw energy and evidence of alien activity. The Energon forces the newly arrived Transformers to take on protective beast modes to shield themselves from ambient Energon radiation. The teams are divided by the good Maximals and the bad Predacons, and so the Beast Wars begin. Beast Wars was eventually followed by a sequel series called Beast Machines, which featured redesigns of a lot of the characters. The two series were just a lot of fun and had great stories. The CGI, although dated now, for its time was great, which is one of the reasons I liked the show so much. It was just visually fantastic. Reboot was a great show too. You guys remember Reboot? That show was so good. Now I can go on and on talking about Transformers since their history is so rich and full of content and different characters, but that would take hours. Everything I did mention, however, is the foundation of their history and or some of my favorite aspects or interpretations of them over the years. So if I missed something you thought was important, I'm sorry, there's just way too much to cover and not a lot of time. Now, I know what you're thinking. You can't end a history of segment and not give us some comic book reading recommendations, and you're wrong. I totally can, but I won't because, quite frankly, that's rude. You have the classic Marvel Transformers comics volumes 1 through 6, Transformers the IDW Collection Volume 1, Transformers The Last Stand of the Wreckers, and Transformers The War Within. Also, watch a Generation 1 cartoon series from the 80s and early 90s, and Beast Wars, which is actually up on Netflix streaming, so go check that out. And completely irrelevant, but Reboot is also up on Netflix streaming, so go watch that too. It's just a good show. Buying razors sucks, right? You have to go to the store and then shell out like $20 for some ridiculous razor contraption. My razor worked perfectly fine without the vibrating handle or built-in airbag and seat warmer. Fortunately, there's a company that's doing away with all that nonsense. It's called Dollar Shave Club, and it couldn't be simpler. For a few bucks a month, Dollar Shave Club ships amazing razors and other bathroom stuff right to your front doorstep. Their blades are just as good as the other big shave companies at a fraction of the price. Look at that razor. That's a good looking razor. They've also got Dr. Carver's Easy Shave Butter to make your shave even more buttery smooth. Oh, and they have One Wipe Charlie's, their new peppermint infused butt wipes for men. That's right, it's a peppermint infused butt wipe to clean your bottom area and make it feel all nice and refreshing. Shave time, shave money. Clever, right? Join now at dollarshaveclub.com/variant. First up for Wednesday, June 25th is Amazing Spider-Man issue 3. Because of her last encounter with Spider-Man, Felicia Hardy has lost everything. Now Black Cat is back, and she doesn't want any apologies or excuses, just revenge. Now we have Deadpool vs. Carnage issue 4. Do I really need to elaborate on this? The title should say it all. Now we have Superman issue 32. This is the first issue by a new creative team with superstar writer Jeff Johns and the legendary John Romita Jr. This book is a must check out for any fan of the Man of Tomorrow. Here we have Justice League issue 31. It introduces the new Power Ring, but who is she, what does she want, and how will her presence affect the team? And finally we have Batman issue 32. Batman gets one step closer to the endgame with the Riddler as the final chapter of Zero Year Savage City draws closer to the finale. Well, that brings another episode of Variant to a close. But remember, you could always like our Variant Facebook page to keep up with the show and all things comic related. You could also follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Arris_Quinones. But I will see you guys next week when I talk about all things comics. When Microman was a humanoid, Ultra Magnus, oh, the boots and cats and 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 boots.